Terrifying true story that inspired Candyman. To be honest, I don't know what Candyman is, but this is, I don't know, it looks interesting. The thumbnail looked interesting and I got clickbaited. This is by Mr. Ballin. Let's begin.
Inspired a popular horror movie, and when you get to the reveal in this story, you'll understand why. It is literal nightmare fuel. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place.
I am a
that's what
fan.
we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please sneak into the like button's house and toast all of their bread and then leave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
Candyman. I only know Candyman from Christina Aguilera's song titled Candyman.
One day in early January of 1987, a very strange 52-year-old woman named Ruthie Mae McCoy walked out of her 11th floor apartment in Chicago, Illinois. Today was the day
a real photo.
Ruthie was going to be doing one of her self-appointed public duties. Ruthie was quite tall, and this particular day, she had on 2 pairs of pants with a dress over them. She also had her favorite long stick she was carrying.
2 pairs of
Ruthie
pants.
Marched down the hallway, she began jiggling each of her neighbor's doorknobs to see if they were unlocked.
Monkus.
And then in between each doorknob check, she would suddenly stop and wave her stick around like it was a sword, and she was fighting off some unseen attacker. And so after Ruthie had checked 4 doors in a row that were all locked,
I'm getting chills.
She reached the 5th door, and when she tried the doorknob, it was unlocked. And so without any hesitation, Ruthie pushed the door open, she stepped inside and began yelling, "Hey, look at me, I'm inside of your apartment!" And the woman who
she's
lived
crazy.
in this 5th apartment was in her kitchen making dinner at the time.
Always keep your doors locked.
And when she looked up and saw Ruthie barging into her apartment, she wasn't scared. She was just totally annoyed. She rolled her eyes and then began yelling at Ruthie to get out now. But, as always, Ruthie didn't listen. And before long, Ruthie had moved from the doorframe into the apartment, into the kitchen, where she was waving her stick around wildly and berating this young woman for leaving her front door unlocked in this very dangerous apartment building. The young woman yelled at Ruthie a few more times to try.
She was like being a dick about it, trying to teach the person living in the apartment a lesson, I guess. But she was being a dick about it.
To get her to just leave, but Ruthie didn't budge, and so eventually this young woman picked up the phone and called 911. It would turn out the 15-story apartment building that Ruthie and this young woman and all of their neighbors lived in was indeed a very dangerous place to leave your front door unlocked. In fact, at the time in the late 1980s, this particular apartment building was considered to be one of the most dangerous places in all of Chicago, with a murder occurring there nearly every week. Gangs basically ruled the building, which was
Why would you still live there if every week someone's dying there? Like, just I don't know if I could live there. I don't know if I can live constantly in fear, just always looking at my back if someone's there. I've been in like situations, like really bad situations before, and I did get some PTSD from those, but to live like that every day, bruh.
Totally falling apart and totally decrepit, and had these long dark hallways that thieves and killers could hide in. And so Ruthie wasn't wrong in trying to get her neighbors to keep their doors locked.
I mean,
but
she was being a dick about it.
Approach to delivering this message was never met with appreciation from the people who lived on her floor.
You're being
Instead,
a dick about
her
it.
neighbors viewed Ruthie as potentially more hazardous than
crazy
anything
person
Ruthie was trying to protect them from. However, in reality, Ruthie was not a threat to her neighbors.
She was just trying to be a good neighbor.
Mentally unstable and basically afraid of everything. For example, whenever Ruthie got mail, she would just assume that it was terrible news and most likely about someone coming to take all of her money.
She's a doomer. Like anything that happens is like a bad thing. Like it's always it it's always she always sees things negatively, probably. Like it's always it means it means her doom, I guess. That's why it's called a doomer.
And when Ruthie was out in public, which was quite rare, she was so scared of strangers that whenever she passed them, she would just yell out obscenities at them to keep them away. And then also, when Ruthie was in public, she never ate because she was afraid strangers
Someone
were going
would
to
poison
literally
them?
run up and take her food. So, back inside of this fifth apartment that Ruthie has barged into, Ruthie was busy berating this young woman about her unlocked door when the police did finally show up and they dragged Ruthie out of the apartment into the hall. The police, by this point, knew Ruthie really, really well, and they were not about to arrest her. They knew she was harmless, but just kind of out of her mind. And so, like they always did in this situation, they told Ruthie to leave her neighbors alone and just go back into your apartment and mind your own business. And Ruthie usually would...
This is what's scary to me about living in the same building as absolute strangers. I cannot do that because you never know which one's crazy. Like I need the whole house to either be to myself or to have people I know there. I can't have strangers. I can't live in a house with strangers because I have trust issues and I'm paranoid and I just don't like strangers.
Would mutter something under her breath about needing to increase the security in this building, but she would eventually do as she was told and she would go back home. And that was basically Ruthie's life in a nutshell. Constant fear and paranoia from living in this totally dangerous apartment building, exacerbated tenfold by her very poor mental health.
I'm starting to be
But
scared that
Ruthie
I'll be
was
like
not
her
content with
when
her
I'm
life.
older.
She, like virtually everybody else in this high-rise apartment building, wanted to get out and live somewhere else and have a better life.
Oh, so everybody
But
wants to leave.
Ruthie, like virtually everybody else living in this high-rise apartment building,
They can't.
did not have enough money.
There it
And
is.
so she was trapped there. But then, in February of 1987, so 1 month after busting into that woman's apartment, Ruthie got incredible news. She had recently begun going to a day program for psychiatric care at a local hospital.
Nice.
And the staff there had really taken a liking to her, and they were going above and beyond trying to help
she's getting better.
kind of get her life together beyond just her mental health. And so one of the things they were doing with her was helping her apply for various government programs like disability payments. And so that month, in February, Ruthie found out that the application they had sent off for her was approved, and so Ruthie was entitled to disability payments, which meant
What is a
right
disability
away she would get a
pay- Oh, there
check
it
for
is.
$2,000, and then every month going forward indefinitely she would get a payment. It wouldn't be $2,000, but it would be a lot of money. Ruthie was
It's still
beside
something.
herself. She could not believe her luck. And she now knew that with this money, she would finally be able to move out of that terrible apartment. Even
Yeah.
before the money began
Hell
coming
yeah.
into Ruthie, she was already looking for a new place to live. And as she did this, all she could think about were her two beloved grandchildren, a little boy and a little girl. They were the only people in the world, it seemed, to Ruthie that really accepted her and just loved her unconditionally.
She
And
had
so whenever Ruthie
grandchildren.
would go visit her grandkids, the
Oh,
three of them
at
would
least
sit
he's
on
not
the
living
ground
with them.
and just play together for hours and hours. But to that point, Ruthie's grandkids had not been allowed to visit Ruthie at her apartment because it was too dangerous. But now that
Makes
Ruthie
sense.
was going to move into someplace much, much safer, she knew that was going to change. She was going to see her grandkids so much more often. And this made Ruthie so happy. And this newfound happiness inside of Ruthie really motivated her to start looking at other aspects of her life and see if she could improve them. And so
Nice.
as Ruthie
Okay.
is doing this new apartment search, she began taking classes to finally get her high school degree. She began picking up these
Yo,
old art projects she'd
okay.
kind of blown off. And also, most importantly to this story,
Turning it
she really began
upside-
leaning into her religion, something she had not been doing for a long time. Specifically, she began
She's
tuning
turning
in
it
to these
around.
very animated preachers
Oh
that she would
no.
find on
Not
TV.
that.
And when she really liked one of them, she would
No.
write them a letter, and in this letter, she would praise them for their sermons and
Oh
how incredible
no.
they were. And she would ask them to bless her with miracles.
Oh
and
no.
These miracles were often just centered on her health. She wanted to look and feel young again. And some of these TV preachers, who were actually just running scams, would write back to Ruthie and say, "Of course we can bless you with your
For payment.
miracles, but first, send us some money."
There it
and
is.
So, when Ruthie's disability payments began coming in,
Bro.
even though she needed to save every penny to be able to afford moving
I swear these like evangelist fucking cult ass leaders, they claim to be like, we are the son of God, or like we preach the word of God, but they're like the most evil people ever because they take advantage of these people who become their followers. They take advantage of them financially, and they, I guess, manipulate them into believing that if they give more, the more money they give, the more blessings they get. It's so fucked up.
out to start this beautiful new life with her grandkids, she still found a way to set aside some of that money and sent it off to these TV preachers.
Don't.
And soon, these preachers were sending things back to Ruthie. Things like a blessed piece of wood for her to sleep on, or bottles of water said to be from the holy river Jordan. These spiritual items were often accompanied with a letter from these preachers telling Ruthie that in order for them to fulfill her miracles request, she would need to keep these spiritual items close to her and also send us some more money.
Shit.
And so Ruthie did as she was told, and after sending off all this money, she would excitedly wait inside of her apartment for her miracles to come true.
This is so
and while
evil.
she waited, she began tacking up all these newspaper articles all over her apartment of these people who miracles had happened to them, that supposedly God had fixed their teeth or eradicated a tumor in their brain or cured them of
I
cancer.
hate it. I hate
And in
it so
all of these
much.
stories, the person who the miracle happened to would describe looking in the mirror one day and just looking different. And that was the moment they knew that this miracle had occurred. And so Ruthie, believing this was bound to happen to her any day because she was working with these TV preachers, began going to her bathroom
Just
mirror
all lies,
the time
dude.
and just looking at herself,
She's
looking
gonna
for
go
some visible
crazy.
change in her appearance that would indicate one of her miracles had come true.
I have a prediction. She's gonna get frustrated that nothing changes. That because she's mentally unstable, she's gonna end up changing her own appearance just so that when she looks at the mirror, she looks different. That is my prediction for this.
But by April 22nd, so roughly a month after finding out she was going to be receiving these payments, and this was about 2 weeks before she was set to actually move out into her new place, Ruthie had still not seen any sign in the mirror that she had changed, and so she believed these miracles had not happened yet. But something else had begun happening
Because it's
when
not gonna
Ruthie was
happen.
in the bathroom looking at herself in the mirror. And that was, she would hear somewhere off in the distance the sound of someone talking to her. It was almost like they were whispering to her, but she couldn't quite tell what they were saying.
Oh no.
Now, Ruthie wanted to believe that
Oh,
these
no.
disembodied voices had something to do
Schizo.
with her miracles coming to fruition. But Ruthie was naturally a very paranoid and scared person, and so she couldn't help but be a little bit scared of these voices.
That
And
is
so
me.
that afternoon, when Ruthie was on the bus headed back home after a doctor's appointment, she told a friend
she
on the bus
schizophrenic?
about these strange whispers she was hearing, and Ruthie would also say that she felt like these whispers meant that somebody was out to get her. Now, Ruthie's friend knew Ruthie really well, and this just wasn't unusual behavior for Ruthie. Ruthie routinely thought people were
She
out
didn't
to get
tell
her,
that
and
to
she
her
talked about
doctor,
hearing
though?
voices before in the past. And so this friend told Ruthie that, you really should tell someone about this. But deep down, this friend was not that concerned. This was kind of normal Ruthie behavior, and this couldn't be a big deal. However, it would turn out to be a huge deal.
Oh no. She's schizo,
Today's
isn't
video
she?
is sponsored by NordVPN.
NordVPN.
As many of you may have already heard, our beloved swearatawalrus.com is now officially off the internet. There was no better way to let off steam after a long, hard day than to sit down and see a stupid old walleye face staring back at you on a Zoom call and just letting the obscenities fly. But don't worry, me and old Lung... But don't worry, me and old Lung found an alternative stress reliever that's just as good. The website is beatupaleprechaun.com, and as the name implies, it allows you to finally lay the smackdown on those crafty little monsters. All you gotta do is log into their website, go to their
Beat up a
leprechaun
phone.
radar screen, and the second you see one of those little weasels pop up nearby, it's time to suck down some fight milk and go to work. Old Lung and I quickly became addicted to this
Oh, it's like Pokemon Go, but it's a leprechaun and you're not catching it, you're beating it up.
service, taking down 1, 2, 10, 50, 1,000 ornery leppies in a given week. But last night, we ran into a serious issue. We tried to log into the website, but as we did, we got hit with a pull-up. Pow, 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 pow. And as we're laid on the ground, struggling to survive
the
this
ads.
onslaught, the leppies outside heard us struggling to survive.
All
and
the
they took
ads.
advantage. They came inside and they laid the smackdown on us. And then after the dust settled, old Lungy rolled over in pain and he croaked out, "Papa, devi iscriverti a NordVPN," which of course in Italian means, "Dad, you need to get NordVPN." And boy was old Lung right. A VPN, or virtual private network, is a service that keeps you safe while browsing the internet. And NordVPN
The amount
is the
of
brand
effort
name
for this
in the
ad.
VPN space. Not only will NordVPN keep your data safely behind their wall of next generation encryption, but
It's
also,
crazy.
most importantly, through their latest feature, threat protection,
He
they will block
he
those
wrote
horrific
a script
flaws
for it.
that lead to leprechaun-led thrashings. So, if you're like me and old Lung, and you'd rather beat up a leprechaun than have a leprechaun beat you up, then you need to sign up for NordVPN today. Right now, NordVPN is celebrating their birthday, and so as a result, they are offering you all a special deal. You can get a 2-year plan at a massive discount, plus at least 4 months or up to 1 year of service for free when you go to nordvpn.com/MrBallin. And it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/MrBallin, or click the link in the description below.
I'm
Okay,
watching
back
the
to
ad
story.
because I'm using his content. I don't know, it just feels right that I do
around
that.
8:45 p.m., when Ruthie was back home at her apartment, she called 911. And when the dispatcher answered her call, Ruthie was in a total panic, and she was talking about something to do with the cabinets and with her bathroom and how her neighbors wanted to use her bathroom. And the dispatcher just did not understand.
What?
And they tried to ask Ruthie some clarifying questions, but Ruthie just could not put together a coherent sentence. And so the dispatcher told
She's
Ruthie that they
schizo.
would send police over right away. And then afterwards, the dispatcher would put out to the officers in the area that, hey, Ruthie McCoy seems to be having some sort of argument with her neighbors over cabinets. I don't really know, but someone needs to go check it out.
It's
And
not
when
her
the
neighbors,
officers got
it's
that
her
call, They were
mind.
not quick to respond. They knew Ruthie. They knew that this was likely nonsense. But 15 minutes after Ruthie called 911, 911 got another call from somebody else inside
Someone
of
died.
Ruthie's apartment building, and they were calling to report hearing loud noises coming from inside of Ruthie's apartment.
Oh
And so
no.
at this, the police did act quickly. They rushed over to the apartment building. They went to the 11th floor. They went to Ruthie's door, and they began pounding on her door because it was locked. But Ruthie didn't come to the door, and it was totally silent inside of her apartment. And so at some point, the police called back to dispatch and asked them to call Ruthie on the phone she had just used 15 minutes earlier to call 911. And so these police
Okay.
officers are standing right outside of Ruthie's door, and they're listening to the sound of Ruthie's phone ringing inside of her house.
So,
but Ruthie
it is
didn't
the
answer.
right
And again, the apartment stayed totally quiet. And so the responding officers turned around and began walking down the hall and knocking on other people's doors and began
Did you
asking
hear
them,
the
"Hey, did you hear
noise?"
any loud sounds coming out of Ruthie's apartment?" And everybody said No.
No.
And so the police eventually just kind of gave up and left, despite not seeing Ruthie, not talking to Ruthie,
They
not seeing what's
left?
going on inside of her apartment. The next day, when one of Ruthie's friends on her floor noticed that Ruthie had not come out of her apartment all day, and when she knocked on the door, Ruthie didn't answer, this friend called the police. The police came out again,
welfare
they
check.
knocked on Ruthie's door, and after a while, when she didn't answer, the police again just left. Ruthie's friend, who had called the police, was furious that the police were not taking this seriously, and so she wound up contacting maintenance of the building, and a janitor went up to the 11th floor, went to Ruthie's door.
Isn't a welfare check like they have to see the person, like they have to be sure that the person is okay? Isn't that how a welfare check works?
Drilled through the lock.
Well, then again, it didn't. He didn't say it was a welfare check, I guess. But what else could it have been?
And pushed her door open. The janitor immediately yelled out for Ruthie, but there was no response, and so he stepped inside and kind of looked around, and
Bathroom.
right away he was struck by two things. One,
Smell?
it was a total mess inside of her apartment. There were all these religious books and pamphlets all over the ground, but as messy as the apartment looked, it also seemed weirdly empty. Like there was no TV, there was really no furniture or anywhere to sit. It was almost like this apartment had been half moved out, and then whoever was moving it out had just kind of stopped. The janitor started to get a really
So it's
bad
empty?
feeling about being inside of this apartment, but he
Of
mustered the
course.
courage to walk a little farther into the apartment to look into the bedroom. And when he turned the corner and looked into that bedroom,
Oh,
he
no.
froze, because there on the ground was Ruthie McCoy. She
Dead.
was lying on the ground in a pool of her own blood.
There
She
it
was
is.
dead. The police were called, they came out, they walked around her apartment, and they concluded that this was kind of an open and shut case. Ruthie must have opened her door for the wrong person who came inside and killed her. Remember, this apartment building saw one murder nearly every week, so this really was kind of routine. And just a couple of days later, the police would arrest a 19-year-old living in this apartment building named Edward Turner because he was found to be in possession of Ruthie's TV. Edward did not
She got
admit to
robbed.
doing anything, but the police assumed that, he must have tried to rob Ruthie,
Yeah.
and in the course of this robbery, perhaps Ruthie had tried to fight back, at which point Edward had overpowered her and killed her. But the police did suspect that there was at least one other person
In the bedroom,
involved
though?
in Ruthie's murder, so they did keep investigating. And then in June, so about a month and a half after Edward was arrested, the police began hearing this very disturbing rumor about the building where Ruthie had lived. At first, the police completely dismissed it because it sounded
Why?
totally made up. But
It
when
is what it
kept
is.
coming up over and over again whenever they interviewed anybody in this building about Ruthie's murder, the police finally decided they had to at least look into it in order to confirm that it was not true. However, when the police looked into this rumor, they would discover that it was true, and it absolutely played a role in Ruthie's murder. Back on the night
What's
of
the
April
rumor?
22nd, 1987, so the night that Ruthie called 911 in a panic, saying
Uh-huh.
something about her cabinets and her neighbors and her bathroom. Well, what had really happened is Ruth was home around 8:45 when she heard this loud banging sound coming from her bathroom. And then before she could go over and inspect the bathroom, her bathroom door flung open, and standing in the doorway was this dark, tall figure
It's a
who
dude.
just suddenly took off running through her apartment, out her front door, out into the hallway. Ruthie was so startled she had no idea what to make of it. She
That was
knew
just
that
a dude in
sometimes
her-
she
in
saw
her
things
house.
that weren't real, and so she likely struggled to figure out, did that really happen? Am I dreaming? Am I hallucinating? What's going on? And so with all these thoughts going through her head, she called 911 to get help, but she couldn't quite describe what had even happened. And so that's why she began rambling about how her neighbors wanted to use her bathroom and the cabinets were somehow involved. It was all very confusing. And so the dispatcher obviously didn't understand what was going on, but they told Ruthie, okay, I'll pass this along and the police will be out soon. And so
But the
as
fact that-
Ruthie is
The fact that the police did not take it seriously, I feel like is a big issue here.
Waiting for the police to show up, she wanders over to the bathroom where this dark figure has appeared, and she walks inside and she looks at where her mirror had been above her sink. The mirror that she had spent so many hours looking into, hoping for signs of a miracle, and the mirror was gone. And in its place was this big dark hole on the wall.
Oh,
almost
shit.
like an entrance to a dark tunnel. And as Ruthie is staring
Someone was inside the walls. What the fuck?
at this void, she sees these two dark hands emerge from underneath that come out of the hole and grip onto her sink. And then eyes pop up and a man's head pops up, and then he uses his arms, which are clutched onto the sink, to pull himself up and out of the hole in her wall, where he plopped down on the bathroom floor and then stood up and stared at Ruthie. And then everything after that point would have happened really fast. Ruthie likely began screaming, at which point the first man, the dark figure that had run out into the hallway and prompted Ruthie to call 911, he must have heard Ruthie screaming, and so he came running back in through the front door into Ruthie's apartment with a jacket over his head. And then at some point, he or the other man who had come out of the hole in the wall yelled at Ruthie to get down on the ground. Maybe she didn't comply, maybe she did, but after that, 4 gunshots rang out. All 4 shots hit Ruthie. However, these 4 shots did not kill Ruthie right away. And so Ruthie was very alive as these 2 men stole her TV, they stole her rocking chair and some other things.
Imagine living in a building that's like that. You can never trust the mirrors. That's crazy. There's just a hole there. Holy shit.
And Ruthie was almost certainly still alive when the police did finally show up.
I can't even fathom.
Knocking on her door and calling her phone, but she was bleeding to death. She couldn't move, she couldn't make a sound, but the police just abandoned her, at which point she did die. It would turn out that disturbing rumor that the police heard about this apartment building was that apparently people in this building had learned that you could pull off your mirror inside of your bathroom and literally climb into the walls.
So all the bathrooms are like that. All of them. What the fuck?
And from that point, you could basically wander all over this building and then punch other people's mirrors in their bathrooms in, and then climb through that hole and do whatever you wanted to the people inside of that apartment. And so when Ruthie began hearing those whispers when she was in her bathroom looking at the mirror hoping for a miracle, those were the sounds of thieves and killers and criminals slinking about her wall. Detectives
she wasn't
speculated
schizo.
that the 2 men who killed Ruthie likely found out about her disability
She wasn't
payments
schizo.
and decided to rob her. However, the 2 men that police arrested, the 19-year-old Edward Turner, who was found in possession of her TV, and this other man who was also arrested, were ultimately acquitted because there were so many people crawling through the walls all day and night inside of this building that there was no way to prove
So
that
it was
those
just a
2
thing.
were the ones who actually went in and killed Ruthie. To this day, no one else has ever been charged with Ruthie's murder. What happened to Ruthie became the basis for the very popular horror movie called The Candyman, starring Tony Todd.
Oh.
So that's
I don't
gonna
know
do
that
it.
movie.
If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please sneak in to the like button's house.
Can you imagine living in a place like that? It was just a thing where people were just roaming in your walls. I think it's because in the US, walls are made of like wood and I forgot the material, drywall, and that's why it's easy to do things like those. Because here in the Philippines, most things are concrete, so you can't just put a hole. It's gonna be hard. Damn, dude. The law enforcement in this case was so lacking. Like, they just didn't give a shit. They didn't realize that someone who was usually loud was not answering. You know? Like, yeah, it's her. She's a problem person, but she's usually loud. And she already called earlier, so why wouldn't she answer? Like, they didn't put that together. And the fact that they didn't actually check on her was a huge mistake. a huge I forgot the term for it. Oversight, I think.
toast all of their bread, and then leave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. We have a podcast called the Mr. Ballin Podcast that puts out brand new exclusive content on Mondays, and on Thursdays, we put out the remastered audio of our best YouTube videos. Again, it's just called the Mr. Ballin Podcast, and it is available exclusively on Amazon Music. Consider donating to our charity called the Mr. Ballin Foundation, which honors and supports victims of violent crime as well as their families. Monthly donors to the Mr. Ballin Foundation Honor Them Society will receive free gifts and exclusive invites to special live events. Go to mrballin.foundation and click on Get Involved to join the Honor Them Society today. We have 2 additional YouTube channels, Mr. Ballin Shorts and Mr. Ballin en Espanol. We post near daily
he's
content
doing the
on
Spanish
TikTok, Facebook, and
as well.
Snapchat. All of those pages
The
are
Mr.
just
Beast
called Mr.
style.
Ballin. If you want to get in touch with me, please follow me on any major social media platform and then
I think
send
it's
me
really
a direct
smart that he
message.
does that.
My username is just @Mr. Ballin, and I really do read the majority of my DMs. Check out our brand new website, ballinstudios.com, to join our Discord server, to buy merch, to see what we're up to see what events are coming up. It's all on ballinstudios.com. So, whether I see you on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, other YouTube channels, the podcast, wherever, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.
Sick. This is a good video. I like how Mr. Ballin does his stories. So, yeah. Subscribe.